A lot of people are struggling in the shadows. Like for me, for example, no one had ever said a word to me like, hey, you might have a drinking problem. And I would say probably the majority of women who would fall under that alcohol use disorder category probably are in that category because you can become very adept at hiding things. If you're in a room of, like I always said, if you had 7 women in a Bible study sitting on your couch, you could look at all of them and you wouldn't know which one had a problem.
Welcome back to Problematic Women. I am your host, Elise McHugh, and guys, happy dry January if you are partaking. So maybe this month you are stepping away from alcohol to, reset your liver after all of the holidays shenanigans, and I totally get it. But maybe you are stepping away from alcohol altogether for many reasons that it could be monetary, health, mental, financial, what have you. Either way, you are not alone because culturally, our relationship with alcohol is changing rapidly. There is so much science and culture to unpack with this subject, which is why I'm so glad to introduce our problematic woman of the week, Ericka Andersen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh. So Ericka, you just released a new book called Freely Sober, Rethinking Alcohol Through the Lens of Faith. So cute. It matches our set.
I know. Pink. You got to go pink when you're a girl.
Yes, absolutely. But before we dive into that, how have you been? You used to be here in DC. You used to be part of the swamp. How does it feel to be back?
It feels always fun to be back. I lived here for almost 10 years, so I miss it. I miss that time in my life. And it's just like all the memories come flooding back in my Uber ride over here and to walk into Heritage and just see how things are going. Like, it's fun.
Absolutely. And it's such an interesting time to be back in DC. I always feel like whenever we have guests on and they're visiting DC, I'm like, oh, this one really big thing happened or this one really big thing happened. And I learned to stop saying, oh, this is a really exciting time to be here because it's always
exciting.
There's always something crazy going on, good or bad.
Yeah.
And I feel like everyone who works here, you know this, I know this, all the young people who work on the Hill or in the DMV or any just like really stressful work environment knows this, like alcohol bars, that is the escape, that is the social hub of everything. Mm-hmm. And I know that you talk a little bit about that, but just I would love to hear an intro on Freely Sober, your journey, the book, anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Washington, D.C. and New York City are the top 2 most alcoholic cities in the nation. Wow. So I'm sure that will surprise no one. But yeah, I moved here as an intern and lived here, through all of my 20s and things. And so, yeah, alcohol is sort of the central sort of unifying thing that brings people together, which can be good in some ways. We need those. We need that kind of those things that bring us together. But there's a lot of negative sides to alcohol that people don't really want to talk about. And that hasn't really been admitted, I think, in the culture for many, many years, although I do think things are starting to change. But to get into Freely Sober just a little bit, my quick story in a nutshell is just growing up in, your normal, typical Midwestern family. And I tried alcohol as a teenager, just sort of your typical teenage rebellion, never thinking it was going to be any kind of an issue in my life. And long story short, throughout my 20s, even though I was very successful and I had a great job and no one would have ever questioned what was going on with me and alcohol, I knew that I had a very unhealthy relationship with it. And I used it almost like self-medication, which I think a lot of people do without realizing what they're doing. And because alcohol is so integrated and just pushed into every facet of our culture with celebration, with weddings and concerts and vacations and parties and happy hours and all the things, we never stop to think what is the damage that could be being done. And we also don't think about presenting this to people as something that they do need to be careful with. Not only for your health, which as we are seeing lately, there is more and more connection of drinking alcohol to cancer. Specifically, breast cancer really affects women in even more devastating ways than men. But also, what is it doing to our mental health? How is it impacting our children and the generations to come? And 5 years ago, was able to walk away from alcohol. I'm 5 years sober. And in that journey, I have learned so much. And there's so much I want to tell others and also give them an opportunity to get free from it if it's something they feel like is an issue in their life.
Wow. Well, first off, congrats. And it just made me curious because you say that we don't realize that we're self-medicating with alcohol. I don't know, maybe anyone listening to this, we're hearing your story and we're like, oh my gosh, I do that too. Was there a specific moment where you were like, I need to step away? This might be a problem in my life. I need to do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's one thing when you are occasionally going out with friends and drinking, and there can certainly be problematic things there. But for me, I think the problem really began to get serious for me when I realized I wanted to drink because of stress, because of anxiety, when I was coming home at night and I was needing relief from my life, and I'm going to that instead of doing something more healthy. And maybe you do that once or twice, but the thing about alcohol is it is an addictive substance. And so your body and your mind begin to grow accustomed to that, and you begin to actually train your mind that you need this substance to get through this feeling. And when you begin associating alcohol with your feelings and emotions, it's no longer take it or leave it. That's where it becomes dangerous. And people can end up addicted and in the middle of, feeling like they can't stop drinking without even realizing it's happening. And then they've crossed the line and they feel sort of trapped inside of that. And that's kind of where I found myself at one point.
Absolutely. What were your steps in recovery? Like, what were some of the habits that you took on that really helped you?
Well, first of all, it's just you kind of got to get to the point of admitting it and realizing that you need to do something, which that took me quite a few years, I will say, kind of thinking about it and then justifying it and saying, well, everybody drinks and this is normal and you don't actually have a problem. I mean, we live in a culture where if you go into the grocery store in the wine aisle, there's a bag that says, wine is just fruit salad, and it's funny.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, just if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's funny, but, then you've got the magnets that are like, mommy needs her sippy juice. Like, all the mommy wine culture stuff, that really, really normalized it. And for me, I really feel like I sunk deeper into the problem when I became a mom. And so it's like there was every reason and every justification to just be like, this is fine, this is normal, this is how you get through life. And so it was a matter of thinking about it, praying about it, and ultimately, having one too many headaches and one day deciding I'm gonna Google about this. I'm gonna see, like, are there programs, are there things where I can moderate my drinking, starting with that kind of thought process. And so it ultimately took me several years to get to the point where I was actually able to quit. But I encourage people to just be open to the idea that there could be something different and it doesn't have to be a bad thing. I think when people think about giving up alcohol, they think they're giving up fun. Mm-hmm. They're giving up all of these wonderful memories and things. And it just, you gotta kind of unpack it a little bit more than that and realize, like, there's a deeper why, and it's also not maybe exactly as it looks on the outside.
Absolutely. And I want to get into that deeper why, because you said something really interesting. You prayed on it. And that is a very central focus of your book. There's a lot of self-help books or advice books or just guides through sobriety, but not many are through the lens of faith, to quote the title of your book. So how specifically did your personal faith play into your sobriety journey, and what do you think we could learn from that?
Right. Well, it was absolutely there from the very beginning. I mean, from the first time that I drank too much as a teenager, I had a guilt inside of me because I knew as a Christian that the Bible says that you should not get drunk. Like, that's clearly a sin to get drunk. And so that was at the heart of it. But I think guilt doesn't necessarily make anyone ever overcome anything. It has to be bigger than that. You have to go deeper to the, why am I doing this in the first place? And so I think all through those many years that I was drinking and I was feeling that there was this unhealthy relationship, I knew that God was calling me to something different. But for a long time, I just kept pushing it aside and pushing it away until I couldn't do it anymore. But when it came down to it, I mean, there's absolutely no way I could have done this without God sort of holding my hand, because the reality is that any kind of addiction, whether you're talking a pure physical addiction or more of a mental addiction, which was I would say more probably applicable to me, it is a spiritual problem on the inside. And what I have to say about that is just that we are all broken people. I mean, every single person is broken, and we're all trying to find ways to fix ourselves. And the best way to do that, I think, is through a relationship with God. But if you're sort of trying to handicap that with other things, as I was, you are going to always come up short. And so for me, it was a matter of stopping trying to fix those problems all on my own with drinking, solving all of my issues with drinking, and really fully surrendering that to God and being like, I can't do this on my own. And ultimately walking in faith in that direction, along with a lot of other things like community and support from friends and practical steps that I talk about in the book, like simple things like taking deep breaths, walking outside, touching grass.
Literally just touching grass.
Literally touching grass is really helpful. That I know it's a joke that people say, but it actually is helpful to engage all of your senses, because it takes you out of the space of your mind saying, you have to do this right now. You begin to realize that you can feel other things, that those feelings actually do go away if you give them time and space. And I really wrote the book to be both practical and spiritual, so that someone can walk into it not only with, hey, this is a prayer you can pray, but also these are actual things that you can do in the moment to overcome this and figure out how to look ahead in a positive and optimistic way.
That's great. And I feel like having that spiritual component too really solidifies the advice that you are giving out. And if people are going to read this book and take the advice, it gives you something stronger to grasp onto, versus just like the psychological words and everything.
Yeah.
It's like, this is actually what spiritually you are called to follow. This is what you're called to do if this is something that you're struggling with. So I think that's actually such an interesting take that I haven't really seen in the space too much. But I wanted to shift a little bit, because there are so many interesting, crazy studies coming out about the relationship between alcohol and culture and different generations, Gen Z specifically. But first, this was a stat that we found when we were looking up stuff for the show today. And according to the 2024 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, 11.2 million females ages 12 and older had alcohol use disorder during the past year. Like, that is insane. 12 or older. So what are some factors that you think lead to this abuse, especially with young women?
Yeah, I didn't even know that stat about kids being so young when they're having this problem. But I think one thing I will say about that number, because I do have a lot of numbers in the book, a lot of statistics, kind of going back to my journalism roots there, is that a lot of people are struggling in the shadows. Like for me, for example, no one had ever said a word to me like, hey, you might have a drinking problem. And I would say probably the majority of women who would fall under that alcohol use disorder category probably are in that category, because you can become very adept at hiding things, and you don't want people to know, and you feel like as a woman in this modern culture, you're not supposed to have a problem. This isn't supposed to be an issue that you have. And so I think that's one thing to just acknowledge. And if you're in a room of, like I always said, if you had 7 women in a Bible study sitting on your couch, you could look at all of them and you wouldn't know which one had a problem, because that's how it's hidden. So the uptick, though, I think that's what you're asking about, the uptick in drinking among women, which has been much faster paced than men in the past 20 years, and also far more devastating in terms of health and alcohol related deaths, there's several factors that go into that. One is actually alcohol marketing. So 25, 30 years ago, alcohol marketers basically started to realize that if they packaged up alcohol and put a pink label on it and threw some sugar in it, they could actually sell it for more money. And they had been missing this target market for so many years.
Oh my gosh, tell me about it. The Pink Whitney hit college campuses when I was there. I mean, it still probably does. Like, the crack in the 80s. Like, it was insane. That was what every single girl had in their hand.
Everybody, it's like, the drink, the popular drink of the moment changes, but it's really, it's just like, it's pretty, it's pink. What did I call it? Pretty poison. I called it that the other day. It's like basically what it is, because alcohol is a toxin that is poison when you put it in your body. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true.
The food dyes don't help either.
Yeah, the food dyes don't help. It's like in a culture where we're trying to get rid of toxins. Hello, Maha. Like, why are we still encouraging people to drink? It's the marketing. And it's also just, I think, just the normalization of this has just become more and more normal. The longer time went on and the more women began drinking, the more it just sort of began to integrate into every area of our lives, including motherhood, especially young adulthood. And the other thing, I guess, that I would say is just women's lives and how they've changed in the past 30 years or so. We are trying to do it all, and I'm not trying to have that conversation right now. But the reality is that women do a lot and they carry a different kind of load than men. Not that it's better or worse necessarily, but just by nature of our personalities, like we sort of are multitaskers and we're caretakers. And so we tend to sort of carry the burden of some of that stuff that's going on in the home. And I always say, I actually love that. I love that I know my kids, all their teachers' favorite gifts, and I take them to their doctor's appointments, and I sort of have that. But there is a mental load that doesn't get accounted for. And I do think that's one reason maybe women have moved towards trying to numb out sometimes. And also just we have taken on a life that is just so full and so packed. And we're told we should be able to do it. And we're not stopping to sort of assess like what's really should be a priority and knock out some of those things that aren't. And so we're kind of leaning on that. Lastly, I will say just the way that women sort of absorb stress and hardship in their lives is different. For example, one of the stats in the book is women in very stressful positions like surgeons, dentists, doctors, like, these big positions, they have a much higher rate of alcohol use disorder than men in the same profession. And I think that doesn't say something bad about women. It just says this is like we maybe take things on in a different way. Alcohol actually affects us in more devastating ways, like in terms of long-term outcomes related to cancer and heart disease and all of these things. You see those numbers are different, and our bodies are just biologically wired in a different way. Not to mention, and this is the big one that people are really interested in right now, the way that it affects our hormones, the way that it is affecting women in perimenopause and menopause, and even younger, stuff related to fertility and all of that. This is all related. And
I actually want to dive into that one specifically with you, because the fertility, PCOS, endometriosis, all of that, alcohol, that is the number one habit that you see in articles about hey, if you want to prevent this, or if you want to get your cortisol down, or depuff, just cut it out. Everything. No one listens to it. Yeah. But yeah, how high on the list do you think alcohol would rank in terms of how it affects your hormones?
Well, I am not a doctor, so I couldn't tell you for sure. But I will say that, like you're saying, every kind of health issue that you have, one of the first things they're going to tell you is to quit drinking. And I think that just goes to show you, I mean, you don't even need a doctor to tell you.
It's just mentally too.
It's mentally. When you look at the effects of alcohol, if you looked at alcohol on a sheet of paper that was you didn't know what it was, say it was we're going to tell you what this substance, this pill does to you. And it would be it makes your anxiety higher. It makes you not be able to sleep. It makes you bloated. It, destroys your fertility, all of these things.
Destroys your entire morning the next day.
Exactly. You would say, well, no. And if alcohol, I heard this the other day, if alcohol were sort of introduced on the scene today, there's absolutely no way it would be legal, just given all the toxic things about it. But because it is legal, we sort of just give it a pass. But the reality is that it is a drug. And it does what drugs do, which it makes you addicted and it does bad things to your body. And I heard Dr. Andrew Huberman, who's a podcast host, he talks about this a lot. And he said he had someone on the other day that was I mean, if you're going to drink 2 glasses of wine a month is probably the most you could get away with and be this is still healthy. And people are what? And right. That's not very much. Exactly. But I also heard someone else say the other day, this, who's Nikki Glazer. She's a sober comedian.
Oh, I didn't know she's
sober. And
so she's just funny like that.
She's just funny.
Naturally. Wow.
Right. Yeah, it's
Props
possible.
to her.
I know, right? But she was sobriety is my superpower. I could not do this. To be out in the clubs, especially if you're a celebrity and entertainer, I can't imagine. You have got to be surrounded by this stuff. And it's so easy to get taken down by it. But when you're sober, it's you don't have anything distracting you. And the other thing, Charlie Kirk he was sober too. And he talked about never drinking. And I thought that was so interesting because he was I read 100 books a year and all of these things. And he was so focused and he was never staying out late with the guys or whatever. And you don't get into trouble when you don't do stuff like that.
Exactly.
And you can really stay focused and you never have those, moments where you're oh, I just wasted my whole day. I mean, there are so many benefits to it. So.
And that's not to say that oh, you're taking up all your time drinking and that's why you're not reading 100 books, but it's a mindset thing. It's you know how to unwire yourself from, hey, I need this crutch right now because I'm stressed, or I'm bored right now, let me just have a glass while I'm watching TV. It really just changes your whole mentality and frees up your time to do so much.
You no longer are going, well, I could do this and get out of this, whatever thought process or feeling. But it really is just a distraction from the most important things. And it only gets worse if you get married and have a family, because kids are so perceptive, and they really do notice any slight change in your behavior or mindset or the way that you behave. It's really insane how they notice that. And that was another thing for me, is like, we have alcoholism, my husband and I, on both sides of our family. And it was causing us to get in fights. And I just thought, I do not want my kids to have this problem. And so I often reference, and this kind of got a bad rap because of the Colleen Hoover movie that was made about it, but the book, It Ends With Us. The book, It Ends With Us, I actually really liked the book, but at the end, it's like, it ends with us, this cycle of domestic violence. And I just so resonated with that title, because I said, that's what I want to do. I want to end the generational cycle that has been moving through our families for so long. And when you look at families, it really is a curse on so many. There's millions of people in AA, and there's millions of people in Al-Anon, which is a group created just if you are a family member of someone that's an alcoholic. And that tells you how toxic and multiplied the toxicity can be. That is not to say that all drinking is 100% wrong or that everyone has a problem, but I think there's more of a problem than anyone wants to admit, or that most people want to stop to assess for themselves in their own lives.
Absolutely. And this information, it's all readily available out there in your book, on the internet. You can even ask Grok, like, hey, why is this bad? And I think Gen Z knows this very much, because a 2025 Gallup study showed that only 50% of young adults between the ages of 18 and 34 drink, and that is down from 72% 2 decades prior. So it's going down rapidly. And, there's a stereotype. It's been the subject of many a think piece. Gen Z doesn't drink. Gen Z doesn't party. Gen Z doesn't date each other. Gen Z's very antisocial. But I don't necessarily think that's the case. Do you have any observations about the newest generation and their relationship with drinking?
Yeah, I mean, I also have found that Gen Z drinking rates are definitely down. I think there's some question to be had there just because of the rise in the legalization of marijuana. I think there's a lot more of that, and I do think that's playing into it. And even though I don't really write about that, I do have thoughts on that, and I don't think it's a great development.
That and nicotine use is insanely off the charts right now.
Right, exactly. So I think, partially Gen Z, I mean, there is the COVID effect in terms of the antisocial behavior, which I think is really negative. So I think Gen Z, like, there might be a little more hope. I also think that there's just an awareness and an education piece about alcohol right now that was not there before. You're seeing it everywhere with all the big doctors. We're seeing books about it now, and people are just more generally talking about it. And sobriety as a trend, just sort of throughout the demographics, is happening. I mean, the wine industry, the alcohol industry, you will see reports like they are struggling because people are not buying as much. And some of that is related to the marijuana too. But I think overall it's a good sign. One thing I will point out, though, is they recently redid the food pyramid guidelines, which was great. I love that. And I love Maha. Okay.
Yes.
But one thing that they kind of quietly did that people really didn't notice was they changed the warning for alcohol from, women should only have this much to men, and men should only have this much, to just sort of like limit your drinking. Like, they actually made it very more vague.
Yes, Dr. Oz, actually, I have the quote from him.
Yes.
I was like, whoa, what is being said right here? He said, alcohol is a social lubricant that brings people together, and there's nothing healthier than having a good time with friends, which, like, as a 24-year-old, I was like, hell yeah. But then scientifically, I was like,
I found that very odd. I found the change very odd. I found that comment very odd because
Chad.
I think that somebody from the alcohol industry is chatting it up with them.
Big Alcohol.
There's something happened. I don't know why else they would have changed it. Seriously, Big Alcohol has the ear of someone in the administration, and they made that change. I don't know the details, and I don't have time to do an investigative report about it. But I would say just keep your ears and eyes open, because that is weird. It is weird for all the changes that we're making with Maha and stuff, for them to be more lenient and less careful about alcohol consumption, which is more toxic than any of those other things.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that odd. And yes, like it is a social unifier, like we were talking about before, but it's not the alcohol. It's the people, it's the events that we put on. I mean, that's one of the things I talk about in the book actually is, people that are getting sober, one of their biggest fears is, well, how am I ever going to have fun again? Like, how am I going to have fun at a concert, at a wedding?
How am I going to network? How am I going to meet new people?
Any of this stuff?
How am I going to do? Yeah, literally.
We have literally made alcohol this like Band-Aid, or this, like, we think we have to have it because we always have had it, without ever parsing out like what were the other things that empowered us to be confident or to have fun. And once I stopped drinking and took alcohol out of the mix, I realized, oh, it wasn't actually the alcohol that helped in so many of these situations. Like I talk about how I went to a concert, my first concert, and I was like having fun. I was drinking a Red Bull. I always at concerts I have Red Bulls and sour gummy worms, just like
nice.
Hyper.
I've learned when I'm at concerts too, it's like an oral fixation thing. Like
it is, and holding something.
Get a free cup of water.
Yeah.
And I'm fine. I don't even think about going to the bar and getting a drink.
Yeah, there's something about holding it too, just like it's a social, like you almost feel like I have something to do with my hands.
I feel a little weird saying it, but sometimes when I don't have a drink in my hand, I'm like, well, what do I do
I
with
always
these?
have drink. I agree. And like I'm a drink person. Like I constantly have coffee or Diet Coke or Poppy or tea or whatever it is. Like I love having just a beverage. I don't know. It's a weird thing. But so I went to this concert and I was like, do I feel drunk right now? And I was like, no, I don't. It's just the energy and the atmosphere. It literally was the energy. It was the people. It was the fun. It was the music. And you don't realize how much of that has played into so many other situations until you actually give it a try. So it can be a little hard to go into that situation and like you can be like, oh, is this going to, but it's like, open your mind to the possibilities and also look around and you'll realize there's actually a lot of people that don't drink.
Absolutely.
And you've never noticed that before.
So for anyone who is thinking about trying this out, trying the sobriety thing, especially young people who it's so ingrained in the culture and just socialization to go out and drink, what would you say to them in order to get over that fear? Or maybe they've tried it twice and they feel a little awkward because everyone else around them's drunk. What is like a piece of advice or word of wisdom that you would give to people testing this out?
Well, I would just say before you test it out or do it again, is really understand why you're doing it. Because if you're just like, I should do this, but you're not clear on why you're doing it, you're not going to last because there's no deeper purpose.
Yes.
So, one of the things in the book that I have, which I think is a really great tool, is just like a couple of assessments, a lot of questions. Just like take the time to sort of go over what you're thinking about, how you got here, what you might want to change without having any expectations or pressure on yourself. And once you have the why, whether it's I don't want to get breast cancer like my grandmother did, or like I'm training for something, or I want to be healthier in all ways, or maybe it's just like I feel like I have too much of a reliance on this and I'm using it in ways that are unhealthy. Whatever the reason is, like look beyond the next 30 days and think like, where do I want to be in 2 or 3 years and why do I want to be there and how would that look? You have to sort of paint the bigger picture about why. And if you're someone that's like sort of deeper in the struggle where you're like, actually this truly feels like something that is a little bit out of my control, I would say definitely you want to read the book and like do those exercises. But you got to reach out to someone, whether that's a friend, even if it's just someone online, telling even one person to bring that out into the light and get some nourishment on you it changes everything. It's so important. And I realize there is so much vulnerability and fear in admitting that sometimes, but people are so much more compassionate and kind than you think. They're less judgmental than you think. And if they are judgmental, they suck and they don't matter.
Exactly.
And there are so many people that are out there that want to hear your story. I really had a pivotal change in my life when I joined a support community online where they had meetings. And there was everyone there from a 22-year-old single mom to a 70-year-old guy who had 20 years sober, and everyone in between, from feeling like they had a little bit of a problem to people that were getting DUIs. But the reality is, and the important part is, that we are all coming together because we were trying to get rid of this and get it out of our lives. And that brings you a lot of empowerment, and it gives you a lot of strength when you see other people doing that every single day. So I think that's key. And then I also just say, and I know you asked me for like one thing, but
No, please.
I'm just blabbing on, but it's just stop and just like open your heart and just be like, God, like show me what you want to show me.
Exactly. You have to surrender.
Just be open to it.
Yeah.
Just be open to it. Again, without the expectation. That's why it's called freely sober.
Freely sober.
Because when you are compelled to do something, when you feel like you don't have a choice, you don't want to do it. But when you do have a choice and you're doing it for the right reasons and you understand why you're doing it, it's a completely different situation. And I never, ever would have gotten here had I not been able to do this in a way that allowed me to have the freedom to choose instead of being forced to choose.
Absolutely. And that is so beautiful, such a beautiful testament to your journey. And I'm just so grateful that you've come here today to share with us and just dive into these cultural topics, because it's so interesting and no one really talks about it on like a serious, deep level. I haven't seen too much. So I'm really excited to dive into this book. And where can we find your work? Where can we follow you in your journey?
Yeah. Well, you can follow me on Instagram, Ericka_Andersen. You can learn more about the book at freelysober.com, but it's on Amazon. So, but I would love to hear from anyone. Like if this resonated with you, shoot me a DM. If you Google my name, I'm on all the things, all the platforms. I love social media. So definitely find me there. And honestly, I really do want this to come through. I want this to speak to maybe the person that I was 10 years ago when I felt like no one understood me, especially as a Christian, as a believer. And if that's you, like, please feel free to reach out. I really want to be that voice and that helper.
Absolutely. Well, I think that would be a great question of the week. Okay, so first off, the question of the week that I originally wrote, are you doing dry January? Are you doing dry every month of the year? Are you not? Why or why not? But also just, does this story resonate with you at all? Do you have any personal stories? Because community building, like you said, is such a great way to attack this topic, this very sensitive topic, this very personal topic. And let's go over the questions of the week from last week. We actually had a really fun one, a little bit of a 180, but last week we had the March for Life here in Washington, D.C. What a beautiful time of community too. Just so many people have different backgrounds altogether. And we asked the question, why do you think Gen Z is so pro-abortion? Because we found some stats and it was very staggering. And some of the responses that we got, one from Angelina Talks. Hi, Angelina, our old intern. She said, there's a lack of accountability that's been taught to them by older generations. Abby said, because they've been convinced children ruin women's lives. Caitlin said, selfishness. And Kayla said, I think we have an increase in selfishness too. My body, my choice, nothing can stop me. Very toxic thinking. Do you have any insights on this?
Oh my gosh, insights. I think, so you're saying that Gen Z is like,
more pro-abortion. Why do we think that is?
That is a really tough question, because I would actually think that Gen Z would be like less pro-abortion. I would think just with ultrasound and all of that, but I think it's all ideology. I mean, I think it's all sort of brainwashing by the powers that be, trying to tell, the people they're following on social media, the things that they're reading, they're being told and almost like brainwashed by some of this information that healthcare is being taken away. I also think that there are a lot of lies. I mean, every woman, if her life is in danger, it is legal, if the doctor deems it necessary, to give her an abortion. That's illegal in 50 states. But women are being told that that's not true, and that women are not getting health care or being criminalized for miscarriages and things like that. I mean, that is just lies. And people believe it because they're scared. And so I think, the conservative movement or the pro-life movement just has to get out there and be loud and clear about their messaging and get it out there to more places, which a lot of them are doing. Like Live Action is doing wonderful stuff. I know all those groups are doing good stuff. And so we need to do that more and more. And I think over time we will see it subside. I mean, this is a human rights issue, and there's a lot of strong voices out there. So
absolutely. And honestly, being freely sober and like the women's abortion, pro-life, pro-choice debate kind of ties together. Instant gratification culture definitely does play into it too. So if we could just fix ourselves from the inside, surrender to God, and fix our culture that way as women, we'll be fine.
I think you're so right though, because like an abortion is always a tragedy, and a woman may feel like she's sort of getting rid of that issue at the moment, but like that is never going away. Like that's a scar that will remain with her until the day she dies. She's never going to forget she did that. And so many people have so much regret and struggle with their mental health post-abortion. And so it's not a quick fix, just like alcohol is not a quick fix. It just compounds the problem and you have to deal with it later.
Band-Aid for a bullet hole, for sure.
Exactly.
Well, I would love to hear, if you didn't answer the question of the week last week, what you think on that. But again, this week's question of the week, are you doing dry January, dry every month of the year? Why or why not? And did anything we say today really resonate with you? We'd love to hear. We will be asking the question of the week on Instagram. Follow us at Problematic Women. We have exclusive Instagram-only content, and we love to interact with you on Instagram. So please follow us there. Turn on those notifications. We love chatting with you. And Ericka, thank you so much for joining us today. You can get Freely Sober on Amazon. We will link that in the description of today's episode. We will put all of your socials so people can connect with you too and just follow your amazing work. Thank you so much for braving the snow to get in here today. And it was so lovely having you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And we'll be back here next week.